Okay. Hello, everyone. Today, Laura and I are going to talk about the power resource theory, that is PRT for short. This theory is a big deal when it comes to the understanding of the welfare states. Basically, why some countries have strong policies while other don't. It was developed by Walter Corby and later expanded by Esping Anderson. And the question arises that what's its main idea? Actually, the balance of power between workers and employers play a huge role in shaping the social policies of any state. The stronger the workers' organization, like trade unions and left-wing parties, the stronger the welfare state will be. In the slide two, we are sharing the agenda. That's first a quick overview about the power resource theory. Then we will break down its main arguments. Further, we will look at some real world examples. Next, we will apply it to a modern case, particularly Trump's 2025 policies. And finally, we will be discussing some criticism, alternative viewpoints, and additional thoughts. So let's get started. Um, in simple words, power resource theory is about class struggle, that how workers and employers push for policies that benefits them. Corby in 2006 and Esping Anderson both argues that if workers have more power, like a strong trade union or a labor-friendly government, social policies will become more generous. But if employers and businesses have more influence, policies will lean towards free markets and less welfare. This is the theory. This is the theory that is most important because it shifts the focus from economic efficiency, that is what's best for the market, to the political power that holds the most influence. And that is the place where things get interesting because not everyone agrees over it. Some scholars argues that employers also support welfare policies, but for a different reasons, that is particularly needing a skilled workforce. It's alternative thought that we will be discussing in the later slides. Further, moving ahead, we will take a look onto the main arguments of the PRT. That is, for the very first step, social policies depend on who holds the power. Like if workers have more influence, we will get a stronger welfare program. Secondly, a strong labor movement is totally equal to the strong welfare states. Countries those have high union membership, um, women have better social protections. Uh, Thirdly, left wing parties matter in this stance. Social democrats tend to push for redistributive policies like unemployment benefits and further like public health care sessions. Fourth one is democratic systems shape welfare states. In countries with proportional representatives, where multiple parties have influence, left-wing governments are very common, which means more social policies are very popular over there. Also, last but not the least, trade unions play a very big role. They don't just fight for the better wages; they also advocate for the policies that protect workers. So basically, this theory says that the welfare state are not just about economic needs. It is something that is about the political power that basically shapes it. Corby in 2006 further argues that the social policies help to reduce the worker dependency on the market. This is the thing that we can call as a demodification. Whereas on the flip side, some people argues that employers sometimes support social policies too, not out of the kindness, but because it benefits them. For the empirical evidences, there are some real world examples. If Just in case if PRT actually works, the first very common example is Scandinavian countries like Sweden, Denmark, Norway, and Finland. These are the countries that have a high union membership and strong welfare policies. So I guess it makes sense for the PRT. The next is liberal welfare state, liberal welfare state that includes US, UK, and Canada also. Here, the case is that labor unions are weaker and social programs are much more limited. Against the theory fits here. Further, we are moving to the Germany's welfare state. Here, we will see an interesting twist. That is, German employers originally don't like the unemployment insurance because they thought that it would raise the labor cost, and alternatively makes the workers lazy. But slowly and steadily, they changed their stance, not because they suddenly cared about the social welfares, but actually because they had no choice due to the political pressures. And overall, research show that the labor power and welfare generosity go hand in hand. So it supports the idea that a strong labor movement lead to the stronger welfare state, because we will see further, we will see later that there are other theories also that challenges this view, like the idea that business sometimes back welfare social policies when it suits them. For the further part, I'll hand it over to the Laura, who will make us through how this theory applies to the current social policy debate, including what's happening under Trump's presidency in 2025.
So thank you, Mariam, for bringing up the fundamentals and also the theory of power resources. And now I'm continuing with applying it to a contemporary case I think we're all familiar with. It's the Trump administration's Agenda 2025. We use this example of shifting power dynamics between labor and capital to show, in a really striking and recent case example, how political forces and thus also political power shapes welfare state policies. So the current political landscape in the US is characterized by Republican dominance and weak labor forces. We can observe a decline of union influence in a new liberal economy introduced by the Republicans, which means fewer collective worker protections, a liberal welfare state, which of course the liberal welfare state is already prone to. So this scenario is a prime for power resource theories idea that labor power directly impacts welfare state development. With Trump in power, a right-wing populist, neoliberal Republican, and Elon Musk on his side, a neoliberal representative of primacy of capitalism and transnational enterprises, we are currently witnessing welfare retrenchment policies almost on a daily basis, where state support structures, particularly for vulnerable people, such as diversity hires, are dismantled in favor of capital-friendly policies. We also researched some policy examples, and we will quickly share the three most striking ones in our opinion. The first one is dismantling DEI policies. So Trump's administration has worked to remove diversity, equality, and also inclusion programs across various sectors, particularly in the government and also in higher education. Only the past days, we have seen that the administration has actually banned these words in public offices. That's a drastic shift in power away from marginalized labor groups and towards employers and traditional corporate interests. And explained through power resource theory, this means that this is a move by capital to weaken organized labor and employee protection. It reinforces existing inequalities. The second one is Project 2025 and labor policies in general. So Project 2025 includes the weakening of the National Labor Relations Board, that's the NLRB, and the removal of federal workplace protection, as well as we've already seen with US aid, for example, where there were increasing cutoffs. This makes it harder for unions to bargain collectively, of course. And the third one is also corporate culture and strategic adaptations. So in large corporations, fearing government scrutiny, there's a rollback of work-friendly policies, such as, for example, flexible working arrangement and ESG concerns and commitments, that is environmental, social, and governance. So that shows that power resource influence corporate behavior as businesses align themselves with the policy that are favoring profit maximization over workers' protection. And thus, the examples that we show here demonstrate that the Trump administration gives evidence of the influence of power structures. It is not only social policies and the public sector that are affected, but even through corporate culture and strategic adaptations, the private sector, as we can see it. That was our most striking example, where we can all illustrate how it is affecting a real case example. But now we are moving further to a critical discussion. We will show how the limitations of power resource theory might apply also to the Trump administration. So the first one that we see is employer-centered approaches. It's also called the skilled interest thesis. And some scholars have argued in their literature that businesses actually support social policies rather than trying to annul or to completely cancel them. And this is not due to class struggles, but actually to maintain a skilled workforce in their environment. This can align with capitalism as well, where transnational companies are fighting for skilled workers due to competition, and this competition comes from globalization. So an example is, for example, in high-skilled industries, such as, for example, the tech industry, employers actually advocate for better working protections for their employees to retain their talent in their firm or in their country. A second one is political institutionalism versus class struggle. So institutions, let's take the US, such as the Constitution, the Electoral College, and the Supreme Court, they shape policies beyond labor capital struggles. And in more cases, stick to the established paths according to path-dependent theory, rather than giving it to political shifts. In the example of Trump, for example, we can say that institutionalism is also contested, as he appointed over 200 federal judges and 3 Supreme Court justices, which gives him influence on the judiciary. Furthermore, he also challenged democratic institutions in his recent speeches, directly and indirectly, and institutional trust has been weakened through this. But for now, we would say that courts have still mostly upheld their democratic norms, but we will see how that evolves when his presidency goes on. And the third one that we talk about is globalization and financial constraints. So this criticism actually shows that economic pressure, not just political ideology, limit how much welfare states can expand in a certain way. Even left-leaning governments struggled to maintain welfare provisions due to budgetary constraints. And that also closely aligns with last week's presentation on socioeconomic pressure and post-industrialization, which we have already seen from our colleagues. So if power resource theory has its limitations, as we have presented above, what other theories can explain welfare state development? We have some other additional theories that we would like to present to you, and these are the suggestions that we have made. The first one is varieties of capitalism. It suggests that different economies, liberal or coordinated, they develop welfare states due to their economic structure and how they are built within their system. So unlike power resource theory, it empathizes that employer strategies rather than class struggle as the main driver of change. Historic institutionalism, as we have seen before, as a criticism, but also as an alternative now. It argues that once policies are in place, they shape future possibilities through sticking to the path that they have taken, often independent from political shifts. Therefore, power is limited through path dependency. This is particularly set forward by Pearson. And then the last one is political accommodation. It suggests that businesses sometimes support welfare states strategically to prevent more radical changes within their environment. An example would be Germany, where employers accepted unemployment insurances to avoid more aggressive union demands, which were already kind of taking place at that time in Germany. So additionally to the critiques and the challenges that were provided in the reading, we also came up with further points to take into account when dealing with power resource theory. Our most important point is, what is the definition of power? So as we have heard already, Corpy defines it as basically as capacity of different social groups, particularly labor and capital, to influence policy outcomes. Often in research papers, when we did our research for this presentation, we saw that the term is either defined through referring to this meaning or not defined or explained at all. However, if you look at the discourse around power, it can have very different meanings. There's, for example, Foucault, who defines power as knowledge and discourse. So it's not just economics, but it's embedded in language, in norms, in culture, in institutions. So it takes kind of the stance of soft powers. For example, corporate culture influences what workers accept as normal or as given for their working conditions, and it becomes a power within a society or within a company. And then we have Luke's. He tries to define 3 dimensions of power. There is the first one, which is visible decision making. Then there's the second one that is controlling of the agenda, so agenda setting power. Then there's the third one that is ideological influence, meaning to shape how people think and what they believe. So there we can already see there is different dimensions of power that might not align with our understanding in power resource theory. Then we have structural power. That means basically that capital has power even without direct intervention, because economies depend on business interests and business investments. So it's all about capital and not anymore the economy. And then we have Pearson with institutionalism, what we have already talked about before. So that means that policies shape future power structures and make certain reforms harder to reverse. Again, the path dependency. For example, Social Security survives in the US despite conservative efforts to dismantle it. But we will see how that is taking on with Agenda 2025. As we can see in general, according to the definition of power used in the context, power resource theory might have very different meanings and might be more or less applicable to certain policy reforms. So in conclusion, in our presentation, we have shown how power resource theory explains Trump's administration policies, but also where it falls short in its explanatory power. And while class struggles certainly remain a key factor in shaping welfare states, alternative theories remind us that institutions, economic struggles, and also strategic decisions by employers, for example, might play a role and might help us to actually explain social policy reforms. We will explore more of these theories in the upcoming weeks. To conclude, I would like to thank all of you for your attention, and we're looking forward to receiving your feedback to this presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.